for instance, I can give you examples on sustainability and on a resilience approach. From a sustainability perspective, I can think on a technology. Our technology was used, for instance, in one specific company called Evides in Netherlands. Basically, they were trying to minimize the energy consumption with a minimum effort of they were not trying to spend a lot of money or to change all their infrastructure. They were just trying to see if they could optimize their system, their water supply system and their network in order to reduce energy consumption and reduce carbon footprint. Indeed, what they have done through hydraulic modeling and some technologies that were leveraging hydraulic modeling from Bentley, they were able to optimize the pumps, the water pumps. So it's pumps, water pumps are like cars, right? So if you go too fast or too slow, you might be consuming too much energy and too much fossil fuel. So you want to go on the right speed. So that's what they have done in Evides. They optimize the pump operations in such a way that they reduce the carbon footprint in more than 30%. So it's amazing. So really just using software. This is just one example from sustainability. So this is not an example from this year, but it's an example that for me, it's really important because it was like with a minimal effort, they achieved the maximum result, just based on this. Then you have stories from resilience, from a resilient perspective related to water and moving from surface water to groundwater aspects. Think on an example of Africa. I just came from COP27, right? So this story is interesting from an African perspective. Think on what is being done by one company called Rodrigo. This company was aware of data collected 40 years ago for drilling oil in Africa, in Tanzania. They were trying to find oil there. They were not able to find oil. So they reused the data, recycled the data that was collected in that period. And with our sequent technology, they built a geological model that was able to identify aquifers and water that is now enough to supply 1.2 million people in Tanzania. So and they are now mapping the whole country of Somalia. Well, there are different challenges. If you go to the first world countries, like the US, in many cases they have fragmented solutions. Many water utilities, they are small ones. So sometimes it's difficult for small water utilities to understand and to embrace the available technologies that are already there. I think it would be great if they could be exposed to the benefits, to the handprint that our technology is able to provide in terms of reducing energy, carbon, and costs for operations. The infrastructure is there. Then the infrastructure is also old in many cities in Europe and in America. So with aged infrastructure, if you can use technology to better understand problems like anomalies, like reducing water leakage or detecting water leakages using machine learning and AI. So I think this is really great, and it would be great if these first world countries were able to use this technology to address aged infrastructure and reducing water losses. Finally, I also think that there's the problem of environmental justice, which is the countries that are not from the first world. They are countries that are still trying to develop. And in many cases, they don't have access to water at all. So they really need new infrastructure. In many places in India, they have access to water like 1 or 2 hours per day. It's amazing. So they really need they need new infrastructure. They need to optimize it. And for me, I think from a social perspective, I think, the whole OECD countries mainly, they need to make an effort to make them going on a speed that they have more access to water in some ways, but in parallel to address their challenges in terms of climate adaptation, because in many cases they might have infrastructure to collect water, but they have no water.